Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar about the 2024 EquiLeave Leave of Absence Tracker and Metrics spreadsheet. So if you work as an HR professional or leave professional, particularly in a small organization, you know that it can be really, really hard to track all the relevant information related to an employee's leave of absence from your company. There's a lot of information for compliance reasons and for day-to-day administration reasons that you may want to have in one place. And for companies that are larger or have really good and robust HRIS systems, you may have a way to accomplish that tracking need electronically using those systems. And if you do, that's probably the preferable way to do it. But for many of you, you might not have a way to track leave of absences that is robust and gives you all the information that you need in one place. So for that reason, EquiLeave created its 2024 absence tracking and metrics spreadsheet. What this is a Google document that you can use in your organization to track basic information related to a leave of absence. And so you can use this particularly if you are a small HR organization or a small employer to keep track of basic information related to each leave of absence happening in your company. And you're going to do that by just entering information about each employee who happens to be on a leave of absence. And then you can reference this spreadsheet when you need information or when you have questions or are answering questions about someone's leave. It's kind of the one true source potentially of information related to the employee's time off. What the spreadsheet will do is also help you keep track of your tasks related to an employee's leave. As you'll see, it kind of serves as a checklist in a way that's going to help you make sure that you've done everything that you need to do in order to properly manage someone's leave of absence. And so the absence tracker is a good way to potentially store some of that data and also to make sure that you, as the leave administrator, are keeping on track of the things that you need to do to support someone's leave of absence. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can use it. Every employer is going to be a bit different in how they track these things and how they manage leave of absences, but that's the kind of organization that might benefit from using the leave of absence tracker and the ways in which you might use it. And the tracker is just a basic spreadsheet. There's nothing too fancy about it. We've put a few bells and whistles in there to try to give you some features that we thought would be helpful and support you really well as you manage leaves within your organization. But overall, it's pretty simple and straightforward. You could probably make this, if you've got some Excel savviness, but we've got it here for you if you want something to start from, or if you want to just use ours. So I have the absence tracker open here on my screen, and what we're going to do in this video is walk through kind of basically the system that we've set up for you so that you can have some orientation as you potentially consider starting to use it. The first thing you'll notice is that the leave of absence tracker has a few different tabs at the bottom. There's one for active leaves, one for closed leaves, and one for metrics. There are those three tabs, and you could, of course, add more if you want. Maybe you want to track accommodations in this spreadsheet, so you add one for accommodations. Maybe you want to put stuff about employer policies in here. You could put that in there. But those are the three that we're giving you. Active leaves, as the name suggests, refers to employees who are currently on a leave of absence or who have a leave of absence upcoming. So the idea behind this is that when someone tells you, I'm going to need a leave of absence soon, you're going to create a row for them on this spreadsheet that reflects their time off and that you're going to use to track their time off. When someone is on an active leave, you're also going to keep them on this page of the tracker. Now, when someone comes back from leave and their leave is over, you probably don't need to see them, on your active list every day. So all you're going to do is simply copy them over to the closed leaves tab. And from there, you can have the record, somewhere of their leave and some information about historical leaves, but you won't need to see it and be working through it every single day as you're working through your active leaves tab. And the idea behind the active leaves tab is it's really kind of your daily reminder of who's on leave. What do you need to do to move their leave forward? So you can look through all the columns and say, oh gosh, okay, there's something I need to do here. I haven't, done this yet for this person's leave. I should get to that. So it helps you keep track in a really, really simple and straightforward way. Obviously, there are great electronic systems you might use for some of this. But if you need a simpler system for a small organization, again, this could be a way that you decide to do it. So the closed leave tab has the same columns as the active tab. And again, you're just going to cut and paste. When someone is done with a leave, you cut and paste their row from the active leaves tab and paste it over to the closed leave tab on a new row. And that way you can keep that information historically. The metrics tab we're really excited to provide for you. So the metrics tab has automated formulas that will update when someone is on a leave and when you're adding them to the active leave and closed leave tabs. So it populates from those two tabs and is going to help you calculate some really basic metrics related to the leave of absence that you may want to use. And we can help you, if you want, add additional metrics to your leave tracking if that would be helpful for you. But these are some really basic ones that'll get you started kind of in the leave metrics world so that you can have actual data and actual numbers that you're using to administer your policies and for workforce planning and for knowing, what might be happening from year to year with respect to leave of absences. So this is going to auto-populate again as you put information into the active and closed leave tab. We'll show how that works, and then you can look at those from month to month to really see what's going on. So we'll go through that metrics spreadsheet a little bit more in a second. And again, this is downloadable from the EquiLeave website. We have a copy of it ready for you. You can copy this spreadsheet and use it however you wish. But let's start by going over the active leaves tab. And again, it has the same column as the closed leave tab. But what we're going to do is walk through exactly what you're going to do when someone is going on a leave and why we put these columns in there. As you'll see, there are many, many columns. You might not use all of these. The idea is to put the information in there that a leave administrator is going to need and want to manage someone's time off of work. So as you'll see, column A is the employee's last name, and then B is the employee's first name. So the idea is that in column A and B, you type the employee's name, last name, first name. One kind of cool feature here is that we have some conditional formatting set up in the spreadsheet. So if you type someone's last name here in cell A4, let's say we type in Smith, it just shows there, as black and white text, right? But you may want to know if someone has already gone on a leave of absence in this year and whether they've gone on a leave of absence recently. So one piece of conditional formatting that we put in there to help you accomplish that is that this name Smith will change to red if it finds that name in the closed leave as well. So here, if I type in Smith, and maybe do it with the right case, then when you go back to the active leaves tab, you're going to see that changed to red, right? Because that name is going to show up on the closed leaves tab. So that's going to help you just basically keep track if someone previously went on leave. That'll help you detect that. So you can see if someone has exhausted the leave available under your policies or perhaps under the FMLA or other laws like it. Again, the idea is that this is going to turn red if the person had another leave. Now, remember, depending on how you're measuring FMLA, and how you're probably measuring it is on probably a look back kind of basis or look forward basis. Someone could have had a leave in another year, and potentially you need to know that to calculate what they're entitled to. So you kind of have to be aware of that. And the other thing to be aware of is that, there could be multiple Smiths in your organization, right? Pretty common name. That cell A, column A, is going to highlight in red if anyone named Smith shows up on the closed leave spreadsheet. So again, it's just a basic system to kind of throw up a red flag for you to go check to see if there's more information that you need to look at. It's not necessarily a perfect tracker. You could also set up that for the employee ID. We'll probably add that before we upload it. So, if the ID is the same, then it turns red. So to get to keep going through the columns here, ID refers to the employee's ID that you may use in your organization and in your HRIS. That might be information that the leave administrator needs to reference, again, to see kind of what a person's whole leave history is. Column D asks you for the employee's personal email address. And we put that in there because a leave administrator often needs to email someone who's currently on a leave, for example, about their return to work logistics. So that's some information you may want to have at your fingertips. And so that's why that's in column D. Moving on to column E, we have the employee's state, where the employee works. You might want that because different states have different laws that provide for different leave entitlements. So you may want to have the employee's state handy to kind of keep track and look into the different entitlements that might be available to someone in their particular state. In column F, you add the employee's hire date. The employee's hire date can be important for determining eligibility under laws like the Family and Medical Leave Act and the California Family Rights Act, as well as some parental leave laws like New York's. You need that hire date to determine whether someone is going to be eligible for leave under a law at the time that they start their leave. So under the FMLA and California Family Rights Act, someone needs to have worked for 12 months and worked 1,250 hours in the prior 12 months before the leave. So hire date can help you quickly detect whether someone has worked 12 months before their leave such that they might qualify for FMLA. Remember, those 12 months don't necessarily need to be consecutive as long as they were all worked in the last 7 years. So hire date might not be a perfect proxy. There are situations where if someone was rehired, then maybe they could qualify for FMLA, even though they haven't worked a year consecutively yet, but keep that in mind. Department, of course, is the employee's department, and H is job title. I is the employee's manager. If someone's getting ready to go on leave, you're going to need to coordinate with their manager, let them know what's going on, keep them updated about the dates of leave. So that's in there so that you can quickly know who the person's manager is, who you may need to communicate with about those things. In column J, we have the employee's FLSA classification, and this is a dropdown. You can select that the person is exempt, or you can select they are non-exempt. And the reason that's in there is because someone's going to be paid differently on a leave depending on whether they are exempt or non-exempt. If someone's non-exempt, they're just going to be paid for whatever hours they worked, right? Typically, they could be paid a salary, but you don't have to pay them essentially for time that's not spent working. If someone is exempt, they're generally going to be paid for a full week's work when they work any portion of a work week. And you may be able to make deductions depending on the reason someone is on the leave. And you can look at those reasons for permissible deductions on the Department of Labor website. They have a fact sheet about it that'll help you determine that. But for pay purposes, you may want to track here whether someone is exempt or non-exempt in this particular spreadsheet. Column K asks you for the normal days the person works each week. Why do you want to track that? It's for intermittent FMLA leave. So the amount of intermittent FMLA someone might be entitled to could depend on the days that they normally work per work week. Because what the FMLA provides is up to 12, usually, work weeks off of work per year. And the FMLA says that you can take an equivalent amount of intermittent leave. You don't have to necessarily take the leave continuously. If someone elects to take intermittent leave, then they're going to be entitled to 12 work weeks per year. And the exact number of days of leave or hours of leave is going to vary based on the normal days that they work per work week. Everyone's work week could be different. So, if they work 3 days per work week, they're going to get 12 work weeks or 36 days. If they work, 5 days per work week, they're going to get 12 work weeks, which is going to be 60 days of intermittent leave. So the normal days per work week can help you keep track of the amount of intermittent leave that someone might be entitled to. The date of the request in column L is where you're going to put the date that the employee requested leave. That can be a really important thing to keep track of because you have to send out the FMLA notice of eligibility within 5 days of learning of a person's potential need for FMLA leave. And so having the date of request documented can help you for compliance reasons to track that you're sending out the FMLA notice of eligibility on time. It's just a piece of information that might help. In column M, it asks whether you've granted the request or not. You could put yes or no in that column. You also could put the date that you granted the request. That might be good information that you want to have, and column M would be a fine place to do it. In column N, it asks whether the HRIS has been updated to reflect the employee's leave. As you know, your HRIS may have some features related to paying the employee correctly while they're on leave, related to tracking the person's leave or designating them as on leave in the HRIS. And column N ensures that you document when exactly you did that. And again, this is the part of the spreadsheet we're getting into that helps you kind of with a checklist of what you need to be doing. If the HRIS column is blank, you might say to yourself, oops, I need to do something today with this person's leave. I need to update the HRIS. So in that sense, this spreadsheet acts as kind of a natural checklist to help you. Similarly, with column O, it asks you to put the date that you notified the manager that the person will be going on a leave. Obviously, if you get leave paperwork in and you put someone through the process, you've got to let the manager know, hey, this person's not going to be there. And you may want to document when you did that. And that'll help you keep track and help you make sure that you took that step properly and that you got that done. So the manager notified column is where you can put the date where you did that. And again, if you are looking at someone's leave case, if you're looking at a row and you don't see a date in there, you might think to yourself, uh-oh, I've got something I've got to do today. I've got to let this manager know that this person is going on leave. Column P is leave status. And as you can see, we have three different statuses: active, upcoming, and closed. Active refers to a leave when someone is actually on leave at that moment. They're not at work, they're on leave. Upcoming means the leave hasn't happened yet. We haven't gotten to the leave start date, but it's coming up. Closed refers to when a leave is finished and when a person is no longer on a leave of absence and has returned to work or has decided they're not going to return to work, I suppose. We have some conditional formatting here. So when you select active, the row will turn to green. When you select upcoming, the row will turn to yellow. When you select closed, the row will turn to red. And we do that so that you can easily look at the spreadsheet and see, oh, okay, here's who's on leave, here's who's coming up on leave, and here's who's not on leave anymore because their leave has been closed. So that's what you want to do to kind of quickly see what you need to be doing with someone's leave. In column Q, we have the employee's leave reason. And we've added leave reasons here, but you could add more once you copy the spreadsheet for your own use. We have birth parents, non-birth parents, serious health conditions, caring for another, a qualifying exigency related to military service, serving in the military, safe leave, bereavement, and personal leave. These leave reasons that we've pre-populated do feed into the metrics tab a little bit, as we'll see in a minute. So keep that in mind. If you change them or add them, there may be metrics that don't work anymore or that you may want to add in some fashion. But those are the leave reasons that we allow you to select in our spreadsheet. Leave schedule refers to continuous or intermittent. You can select continue whether the leave is continuous or whether it's intermittent. You might use intermittent if someone's taking leave in blocks of time and you don't want to make a row for each, day off of leave. You could just put, kind of the first and last day of that intermittent leave and then note here that the leave is intermittent. There are also some metrics tied to whether someone is on a continuous leave and the length of that leave that we'll see in a bit when we look at the metrics tab a little bit closer. So keep that in mind that that's there for you too. The leave start date in column S is, as the name implies, the first day that someone goes on a leave of absence. Associated with that, in column T, you have the leave end date, which is the last day that the person is off of work. It's not the first day back. We're going to track that in column X over here. The leave end date is the last day that someone is off of work on their leave of absence. And column X, the actual return date, sometimes that will be the day after someone's leave end date, or maybe it's the Monday after if someone ends their leave on a Friday. But in column X, you'll track when the person actually returns to work. In column U, you can track whether the leave qualified for FMLA. So if the person is eligible for FMLA and they're asking for time off for a reason that qualifies for FMLA and they haven't used up all their FMLA yet, you would select yes. If the person is not eligible or they asked for leave for a reason that doesn't qualify for FMLA, then you would select no. Or if they used up all their FMLA and you're giving them leave, you would select no. In column V, we have the 12 weeks end date. So this is related to FMLA compliance, and it will automatically populate. And what it's going to do is, note kind of the date that it is 12 weeks after someone takes a leave of absence and starts their leave of absence. So you can see whether they've returned 12 calendar weeks later. And that can help you with FMLA compliance to see whether, someone has gotten their 12 weeks of leave or not when they're taking a continuous leave. It can be used for that. It's not going to be helpful for intermittent leave in that particular instance. In column W, which is entitled State Leave Entitlement, you might note whether someone's leave also qualified for time off under a state leave law. In column X, again, you're going to put the actual return date. And in column Y, we see that we calculate the length of leave. And all that's simply doing is taking the leave end date minus the leave start date. So the information in column T minus the information in column S. And it's going to tell you how many days off the person took on that particular leave of absence. And so that's automatically calculated. Note too that for the columns in here that are automatically calculated, we grade them out. You're not supposed to type in them. You can if you want to, but you're going to override a formula. So that's how those work. They're going to work automatically for you. Beginning in column Z and for the next few columns, we have a few other things that you might track related to someone's FMLA and potentially their short-term disability. So in column Z, you might put the date that you sent the employee a notice that they are eligible or not for FMLA leave. After you get notice that someone may need an FMLA leave for a qualifying reason, you have 5 days to send out that notice. And so in column Z, you track that you sent the notice out. And again, this can be helpful for compliance and as a checklist. If you look at, the spreadsheet every morning when you're having your coffee and you see, someone requested a leave and it looks like it's for an FMLA qualifying reason, I need to send them a notice of eligibility under the FMLA. Column Z is going to allow you to track that you've done that. So you would put the date in there that you send the employee the FMLA notice of eligibility. In column AA, we have the FMLA documentation due date. So if you're requiring an employee to submit a certification of their serious health condition from a healthcare provider, for example, you would put the date that someone has to turn in that documentation. So in that instance, it's going to be 15 days after you give them the documentation. And the reason for putting that in there is so you can keep track whether someone has done what they need to certify their FMLA leave. If they haven't turned in the documentation, you might ask them, hey, your documentation was due yesterday. I'm not seeing anything. I'm just nudging you. Where are we with this? Are you still going to take the leave? Or is it not going to qualify? But I need the documentation and I'm not seeing that I have it. And you'll be able to tell that by looking at column AB, where you can document exactly when you receive the FMLA documentation. So that's another feature that you might use. In column AC, you have the space to where you can put the date that you sent the FMLA designation. So that's the notice to the employee that says, hey, we've reviewed your documentation, you're eligible for FMLA, and we're going to designate it as FMLA, or we're not because we don't think it qualifies. You document when you did that in column AC, again, to show that you did it and for compliance reasons. So you can look at that column and say, oh gosh, we've got some FMLA documentation, column AB is filled, but I don't see that we've sent, that designation notice yet. We need to do that. In column AD, you can take notes about someone's short-term disability claim and whether they are qualifying for that or what the status is there if you want to track that. In column AE, beginning there, we have some logistics related to the employee's return to work. So you might want to track in column AE the date that you let someone know, hey, your return to work is coming up. We have you as coming back on this date. It's in a couple weeks. We're just checking in to make sure you're ready. Ask if you need anything from us. Otherwise, here are instructions for your return to work. We'll see you back on that day. Let me know if you have any questions. You may want to send that reminder, right? So that people remember when they have to return to work and so that you can answer some basic questions for them about that process and so they can know what they need to do. In column AF, we have the manager return to work notification. So just like you remind the employee about what's happening with their employment, you may also want to remind the manager, hey, this person's coming back to work. Here's what you need to know. And that's what you're going to put in column AF. And again, this is a checklist for you. If you're seeing, oh gosh, someone's leave end date is coming up, but I don't see that I've notified them or reminded the manager, I'm not seeing anything in columns AE or F, you may want to use this to accomplish that. In AG, you may want to note to IT that you have notified them that the employee is returning to work. So they should, turn back on the employee's stuff. You could add a column too to notify IT that the person is going on leave, perhaps next to the column where you notified the manager, that the employee was going on leave. So this is a customizable spreadsheet in that way. In column AH, you can note that you've updated the HRIS for the person's return to work. So again, that HRIS may require that you put in the dates when someone is on leave, and in column AH, that can be your checklist for making sure that you do that. In columns AI and AJ, you can just take some notes if you want in column AI, and in AJ, you might put a link to the file where you're storing information related to the employee's leave of absence. So that's what you can use those for. Closed leaves has all the same columns as the active leave one. And again, the idea is that after someone starts leave of absence, you can just copy and paste, or cut and paste rather, their information from the active leaves to closed leaves column, and then you will get the information there and be able to store it there for documentation purposes. So you won't delete it, you'll still have it, and that can be a quick reference when you need it for record keeping purposes. But keep that in mind. The metrics column. So this is a really cool thing that you can use to have some really basic data for your workforce and for your leaders to use for planning purposes, and to kind of keep tabs on how leaves are working at your company. You can see if there's an increase in leaves and a use of leave. You can see kind of, cyclical information about when people might be on leave, information like that. So let's walk through kind of what the metrics are. The first two are just basic. It's the number of leaves that are commenced by month and the total number of leaves that people are on in a given month. So what you're going to see in this first one are just the number of people who start a leave in a particular month. So if 5 people start a leave in January, that's what you're going to see in that first column. And again, these are going to update automatically as you enter information, the active leaves and closed leaves tabs. Then there's the total number of leaves. So that column is going to track how many people total are on leave, for example, in January. So it's not just people who started leave, it's going to add the people who started leave in months before and are on leave during that month for a little bit of it, or perhaps all of it. So that's going to be your total number of employees on leave. In the second section here, we kind of have the number of leaves by type. So you can kind of keep track of how many of each type of leave is being used within your organization. And you're going to have, ones for each of the categories that I mentioned we created in that past slide. If you change those names, you're going to have a problem. It's not going to work. But that's the idea. Behind this tab is that it's going to count. So if you have, 4 birth parent leaves in January, as you enter that information to the active leave columns, this will populate and update. Note too that you can see it in columns F and J and N. We have, quarterly totals. So that's going to tell you quarterly, kind of what the total numbers are. And then all the way at the end, we have totals in R and S for Q4. And then annual totals in column S of, so that's going to tell you like the total number of leave commenced throughout the entire year. Number of leaves by type, again, you've got birth parents, non-birth parents, serious health conditions, caring for another, qualifying exigencies, and all this information. And then the next section, it's going to kind of track the length of leaves. So you're going to get kind of the total average duration of continuous leaves. All this is going to be continuous leaves in this section is what it's keyed to. You're going to get the total duration of continuous leave of absences in a particular month, and then the quarters and the totals. So you can see kind of on average how long people take a continuous leave. And then it breaks down by different types. So birth parents, again, non-birth parents, et cetera. All the ones that we went over earlier are keyed into this section. So, if birth parents on average take 10 weeks off, that's what this is going to track. If they take on average 12 weeks off, that's what this is going to track. So you kind of have an idea of the average amount of leave that people take, depending on the type. In this section, you can track the percentage of the total workforce that is on leave. And so to do that, you're going to have to enter in row 27 here, the number of employees working in your organization during that month, and the size of your workforce in that month. And then it'll calculate the total workforce on leave by simply looking at, the total number of leaves in that month in row 4 and dividing that into the size of the workforce by the month. so that you get a percentage there. And again, that calculates as you start entering information for all these different months in each of these columns, and then does quarterly calculations as well. So so keep that in mind, that that's there to help you. Note too that some of these formulas are designed to work in Google Sheets and may not work correctly when you move it. And if you move it into Microsoft Excel, some of the formulas might not convert correctly. You may need to modify them to get them to work. So keep that in mind, that this is a Google Sheets driven thing, and that you can make a copy of the spreadsheet and put it onto your own system if you're using Google Sheets within your organization. You should, of course, always make sure that information related to a leave is kept confidential. So this is going to be, something that people can access maybe if they are working in HR and managing leaves, but outside of that, you're not going to be sharing this with others because it's confidential information. Potentially and likely. So that is the leave of absence spreadsheet. We really hope that it's a helpful resource for you as you manage leave within your organization. Again, it's probably not for organizations that have an extremely robust HRIS system, to manage this kind of stuff. When you're at that point of having that kind of system, you aren't, going to be using spreadsheets anymore. You're going to use the system instead, and you're going to tailor the system and your practices to work together really well. But if you are working in a less sophisticated, HRIS environment, or perhaps in a smaller organization that doesn't have that kind of robust leave management tracking, you may want to use the spreadsheet to keep track of who's on leave and what the status of their leave is, so that you can really quickly answer questions for people about someone's status. You can really quickly manage their leave. You can really quickly look at the things in one place that you might need as you deal with the day-to-day of them being off work or being prepared to take off work. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation about our leave of absence tracker. I hope it might be a good resource for you. If you have any questions or want any changes to it, we would love to hear from you about how it's working for you and what we can do to improve it. We're really, really pleased to provide this free resource for you so that you can support your workforce with respect to leave of absences. So if you have any questions, feel free to email us. You can just email admin@equileave.com. And we'll be glad to help you however we can in supporting your leave of absence needs at your company. So thanks for joining this webinar today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to hearing from you about our leave of absence tracker or about EquiLeave's other services. Remember, EquiLeave is here specifically to help you make leave of absence pay calculations. If you provide paid parental leave to employees, that's really our bread and butter and what we're out here to help you do. But we also provide, other resources like this tracker and like our free leave guide that you can get on our website. So we encourage you to rely on those and use them. But of course, remember that you are ultimately responsible for compliance within your organization. We do not give legal advice. We give information, and we give educational resources and tools that you might use like this one, but you're ultimately the one responsible for compliance within your own organization. And this tracker isn't guaranteed to ensure, 100% compliance. That ultimately is going to remain on you, even if you use this tracker. So we really hope it's a really helpful resource and hope that you enjoy using it. That's all for this video. So we'll see you next time on another EquiLeave webinar. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Bye-bye.